With one member of Congress, it's my job to try to help you all be successful. And I do not believe that Vermont can be successful if we don't have strong local institutions, banks, for lending, businesses, for creating employment. And it's my job to do what I can in Washington, both on the macroeconomic level and on down low economic level, to try to help Vermonters be successful. You know, today is a good news day for us here in White River Junction because we were successful. Senator Leahy and Senator Sanders and I worked together on this, getting $50 million for rail improvement for the Vermonter, which, you know, is something that I think right here in White River where would be a better place to get that good news. But the problems in the economy are enormous. One of it was astonishing what happened 15 months ago when there was a total collapse in the credit markets, and it's absolutely unspeakable how that happened, because you all know that it was the big banks, not our local banks, that were buying and selling these subprime mortgages, acting as though the financial law of gravity didn't apply to housing when everyone knew that it would. And it was so bad that Bear Stearns went out, Lehman Brothers went out, and the fallout from that is continuing. And what my goal is to do everything that I can as your representative to try to help stabilize the economy. The financial sector is somewhat, quote, stable, but we're still paying prices for that. But real estate values, particularly commercial, I'm not sure they've stabilized yet, and unemployment is way too high. And you won't get a strong economic recovery until there's stability in real estate prices and unemployment starts coming down. So we've got to create jobs. The people who are here are in the line of work where it's about creating jobs. There's got to be stronger consumer demand. And there's got to be an emphasis on building local economies. That's sort of where I come from. So why don't I stop there and open it up to you for comments and questions. And what I intend to do is listen carefully and then report back to you. But I want to thank you for the work you're doing. The final thing, I do want to say this. I've done a lot of business visits during the course of my 3 years in Congress. And it's amazing to me how hard it is to do what you guys do, because it's easy to have an idea of something that might work, but then you've got to do the day-to-day work of execution, making it happen, and setting up systems so that they repeat and they're done well, getting close to the customer, listening to what it is they want, figuring out a way to deliver it that's cost-effective, maintaining relationships with your workers, threading the needles with some of the bureaucratic hassles that confront you seemingly at every turn. So I hear a lot about those things, and when I can help, I want to help. So I'm going to stop now and then just open it up. Do you want to sort of be the
I can
MC
go down.
here?
We have a list, so I'll call your name if you care to speak. And it's alphabetical, so Ken Alton, if you wanted to start it off.
I was glad to hear the President last night mention money's being set aside or proposed, I'm not sure what the status is of that, for banks to be able to lend more to small business. That was a nice thing to hear, and I guess it's based on the size of the banks, that it's going to be easier for the small banks compared to the larger banks as far as where the funding comes from. Could you comment on that?
Well, I'm going to comment on some legislation I just introduced. You know, the Wall Street bankers, those guys who got us into trouble, did pretty well last year. They got TARP money. That helped. They got, what really helped is they got 0% interest at the open window of the Fed. That's it. And by the way, if you're a saver or you're a retiree, you got 0% interest too. Problem is you were living on it. And they went. They did very well, but they did it not by lending that money out. They went back to the trading operations that made them so much money in the past. So they've been buying and selling derivatives, commodities, currencies, and they've been so successful. And these are the money center banks with their trading operations that they have set aside this is just 1 year from the bailout, $150 billion for their bonus pool. And they had three options of what they could do with that money. One is they could have added it to their capital base, and make them stronger in the event of another downturn so they didn't have to come to the taxpayers. Two, they could have lent it out. They could have made loans. And, you know, if you're getting money at 0 from the Fed and lending it out at 5 or 6, you're doing pretty good. They had a third option, and this is the one they chose. They're putting it in their pockets. I personally believe that's outrageous, okay? Totally outrageous. And because that, it's not just because it's lamentable that that's like overreaching, since the taxpayers provided them the money to, A, avoid a Lehman outcome, but it's taxpayer money they use to make money. So I'm proposing on that bonus pool, a 50% tax with all of the revenue to go into small business lending. And it reflects my view that one of the essential building blocks of getting our economy going is to start having financial institutions who are in the business of lending lend. Now, our local banks are doing it. Our local banks are doing it. If we didn't have the local banks picking it up, we'd have no credit. So I do agree with providing incentives to banks that are actually in the business of lending money. And in fact, I am an advocate, I'm a believer in the Paul Volcker view that you really should make a distinction between commercial lending and investment banking. And if the investment bankers want to buy and sell with their own money or their clients' money, and that's what's at risk, and they make a lot of money, you know, fine. But they should not have the benefit of taxpayer backstop when they're putting when basically they get the profits and taxpayers get the losses. So I'm very excited the President is talking about that, and I'll be very active in that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we can go
mix it around a little
yeah.
bit. Bill Threlkill.
Yeah. I have a compilation of comments from Darcy and David Robinson and Jim Saude. I'm not supposed to use their names, but one of the main concerns was that the SBA reduced fees are running out and they need to be replenished. An area that...
Bill, excuse me, can I interrupt you just a sec? On that tone, there's a bill right now in the House, H.R. 4302. Representative Abercrombie and Lowry.
What is it,
4302. It's the Small Business Job Creation and Access to Capital Bill, Act. And it's supported by 55 members of the Access to Capital Coalition. It's unprecedented to have this much support. And we would encourage you, or I would encourage you to support that bill and also become a co-sponsor of that bill.
Okay, I'll look into it.
That is there now and it's ready to be voted on, but it's been festering since mid-December. And
we'll check that out right away.
There's also a companion bill in the Senate, and I don't have the number of that one, but and that addresses what Bill is talking about. It's the reduction of the fees, it's the increase of the guarantee amount. It extends it through the higher guarantee amounts through the end of 2010, and it also covers the fees.
Okay, so that's 4302?
4302.
All right, we'll check it out today. I mean, they're both very good members, and we'll check it out, but that sounds right up my alley.
One of the other points that we were on a fast track at one time. Let me point out one thing. We're profitable now, we're doing well, we're working overtime, so this isn't for my company. Yeah. This is for general. The CDBGs, if there was some way of getting rid of that stupid HUD rule that you have to have 51% of your employees below a low income level, that would free up a lot of money. Joan worked with us, worked her tail off trying to get one through, but we pay too much, so that was a real problem. Cuts and rebates, that's obvious. SBA loans for small business, very, very good business, emerging technologies. How could we fast track that? That's a critical one. Another one that's trying to get working capital, somehow changing the collateral rules. to.
So these are credit issues.
Pardon?
They're all credit issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously, healthcare. We spend about 230,000 every year on healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And the employees can't get a raise right now. We're, with the healthcare going up, so everything is stagnant at this point. And I'd love to get that reduced, and we would increase the wages.
Mm-hmm.
We'd pass it on to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you know, there's a lot of people who keep going around, but Bill, healthcare is absolutely something we got to deal with. You know, the politics of it are getting tougher all the time, but the reality of the problem is getting worse all the time. And you know, with this employer-sponsored healthcare system that basically is what we've had since the Second World War, it's becoming a millstone around our businesses. They just can't compete. And I really remain committed to trying to have a significant healthcare reform. And you know, ultimately where we have to go is pretty simple to say. We want everybody to be covered. All of us have to help pay. But you know, the work that Dartmouth has done, I've really embraced. We've got to bring down the cost through delivery system reforms. Because I don't care how you pay for healthcare, if you have a system where the costs are going up 2 or 3 times the rate of inflation, the rate of profit growth, that's not sustainable. It's going to collapse on its own weight. So thank you. But,
John? do you
Oh,
have
okay. Yeah, I'm John Bledsoe with Vermont Castings. Actually, I have two things that I'm really concerned about. One's energy.
mm-hmm.
We're the second biggest user of electricity in the state. We spend about
You are?
Yeah.
Wow.
1.2 million a year just to keep our foundry going. And really concerned what's going to happen.
See you, Bill.
Really concerned about what's going to happen to
Good luck.
Yankee nuclear.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, it's, for us.
Yeah, that's going to be a state
It's
issue.
a state thing, but I would think the NRC must have something to say about it somewhere along the way.
Well, the NRC has limited, I mean, this is going to be a state issue on the relicensing, on whether it is or isn't relicensed. The NRC is involved in safety inspections, and obviously you want safety not to be compromised. And this really is the state issue, but you know, energy has not been doing itself a favor by how it's managed.
You know, one of the issues we have though is, what's nice about it is we're able to make a much greener story by saying our carbon footprint is much smaller.
No, it's
because,
true.
you know, Quebec
Right.
Hydro and nuclear energy, as well as the fact that we use 100% recycled material to make
Right.
all our castings. So we've got a nice green story. It helps
Right.
in everything we're doing, and it helps to generate jobs. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd like to know that there's some pressure can be placed somewhere along the way, at least to keep things going.
Well, let me just be very direct on this. That is going to be a state issue. I mean, the NRC review is not yes or no on relicensing. It's really on the safety question. And then the Public Service Board and the Vermont Legislature are going to be the ones that vote, decide whether to extend the license or not. So that's not going to be anything over which I have any direct, really indirect influence.
Okay.
Okay?
The other is just healthcare costs. I mean, they are just
Brutal.
outrageous. I got hit this year with a 19% increase.
It's unbelievable. And you have no control over it. None.
So
You just get the bill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
not like,
this particular one went back and told them where they could put the 19%. They'll probably need their health care to get it out. But we went back and renegotiated, but still, by the time we were done, we still ended up going 8 or 9, it would end up about 9%. And
That's
9%
sustainable.
increases year over year, which is ridiculous.
I'm
I
saying.
just don't understand how the whole healthcare issue got squandered so that we're still talking and things aren't moving forward. We really would have expected a vote by now.
You want to know something? We passed a bill in the House. And by all accounts, it was a really solid bill. It was going to reduce cost over 10 years. I mean, the impartial referee, the Congressional Budget Office, says the House bill would have saved about $100 billion. We'd have 97% coverage. Small businesses were going to be helped along with individuals who had low and moderate income. It's in the Senate. And of course, they've got two things over there that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. One is the supermajority 60-vote rule, and the other is Joe Lieberman. And, you know, you don't know what his mood will be on any given day. But everyone can kill it. And it's a real threat because healthcare has to be addressed. This is not something that is just, you know, some politician's idea of a problem we can work on. This is...
Well, it affects our ability to compete.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I mean, we're getting, I know companies that ended up going to Canada only because they
Right.
looked at their overall cost structure and
Well,
it just
see,
made sense.
you know, you're preaching to the choir here, but boy, that is right. I mean, we need to do healthcare for economic reasons, to be competitive. I absolutely believe that. So I remain committed to making progress on healthcare. And you know, whatever we do on healthcare, with all of the back and forth and all the arguing, it's a beginning, because we know we can't continue to have you get 19% increases. It can't happen. You can't sustain it.
And feel free if anybody wants to raise their hand. I don't want to be like
Alan
a
Hall here.
taskmaster here.
You know,
Congressman, thank you for
don't
coming.
worry.
I'd like to talk about energy. We talked about healthcare, but what are some of the issues that have really got healthcare so far on the plate? We go to the basis of how we all have to live.
Yeah.
And energy costs, which we talked back in the Senate 70s, was the energy crisis. Then the 80s and forward, that we're gonna wrap our arms around it. We spend billions going to the moon, or always
Right.
still in the Middle East. But we do the Alaskan pipeline, and then we ship all the oil to the Orient. And we don't take the 10 years roughly it takes to build a refinery. There's a glut of energy and fuel in the ground. I mean, we have TransCanada and Coder here today, which are very knowledgeable of the energy world and the windmills. And, you know, if we want to get the household to have more expendable income in their pockets, and what it's cost people to heat their homes, to drive to their jobs, there's a lot of commuting involved. And as those prices have been driven up, the only winners have been the buses and the train business. We need to get the money back in the hardworking consumers' pockets so they can have the money, and the employers would have more jobs. What it costs to heat a building, and also as a Ford dealer, my products cost so much because of the driving prices of energy for all the raw materials it takes to build an automobile, as well as a plane. We really gotta get our hands on this energy thing, and it would create a lot more jobs in America. Manufacturing could grow like it used to be. You know, 40 years ago, it was the big three. Now we have so many other players who built plants in Alabama and Tennessee and other places. It's just like, how did Ford turn their company around? They got back to the basics like L.L. Bean and Brooks Brothers.
Right.
They pulled those tentacles in instead of being in places they shouldn't have been, and got back to reality. So my message is, we really gotta get our hands on this fuel. If you think about Thanksgiving 2008, gasoline was $1.54. 6 months prior to that, it was $4.57 a gallon. We were able to get it in control for that short period of time, and now it's just a running freight train again. Thank you.
Well, you know, you're right. You're absolutely right. You know, energy is a huge opportunity. If we try to become more energy independent, we're going to create jobs and wealth. And you know, we've got Grow Solar here right here in White River Junction. That is an example of how you can create jobs if you embrace this. And Grow Solar is finding that they're competing with China on quality and price. You know, they are buying some of their solar panels from China now. And you know, it's not going to. We should be embracing this and being in the lead. And I think we've got to take on energy because it can create jobs. But just on this, the one thing that I've gotten in the energy bill, and President Obama wants to put in a jobs bill, and he mentioned it last night, was energy efficiency and retrofitting our homes. We put $20 billion into this for the next 2 years. It creates 600 to 850,000 jobs. It's plumbers, electricians, carpenters, masons, you know, people who don't have a lot of work because of the housing situation, but they have the skills. It saves homeowners $3.3 billion a year in energy cost, and it's the equivalent of taking 3 million cars off the road. And all of the products that go into the home, 90% actually, have to be are manufactured in the U.S. So you get those jobs too. We got some credits for folks buying wood stoves.
Yeah, it's really helped us
And
a lot.
that's helped a lot. He's twisting my arm to replace the really good stove he sold me about 25 years ago. But I'm pretty cheap, so you're gonna have to work a little harder, you know, but you're right. Thank you.
Peter,
Yeah.
I noticed the President last night mentioned nuclear energy, and I think I heard he was for it.
I heard that too.
And,
That's what I heard.
So I guess my question is, where do you stand on that? How do you feel about this whole nuclear energy?
My view on nuclear energy is two things. One, it's got a sink or swim with the market. It's a mature industry, and I do not believe that it should be getting taxpayer subsidies, okay? Because my view is that tax credits are an appropriate tool to help nurture a promising industry, and that they should go to new, not mature industries. Second, there's got to be some resolution on the waste issue, all right? And I don't know that there is. So I don't have a view one way or the other as to, I don't get into the theology of the nuclear because it's cleaner, but the cost of it is very, very significant. And I think the market has got to be a real determinant.
Excuse me, but isn't everything I've read and everything we've experienced in the state of Vermont is nuclear energy is cheap, basically, or less expensive than the alternative. I mean,
our Vermont Yankee is one of the cheapest power sources around, but of course that's a 40-year-old plant, and there's a significant, and that gets you into this question that you were asking about what's the future of Vermont Yankee, and the state's going to make that decision, and there are significant implications whether to our energy mix, depending on what the outcome is of the legislative decision. But what the president was talking about, as I heard him, was new nuclear. I mean, should we build new plants, all right? And the economics of a new plant are much different than the economics of an existing plant. That's what I'm saying. So the cost of generation with a new nuclear facility is not going to be 4 cents a kilowatt hour, whatever it is at Vermont Yankee now. It might even be a little less. So it's a market issue for me. It really, and it shouldn't. I don't think it should get taxpayer subsidies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Seeing as we've been talking about energy, first I want to thank you, Peter, for all you've done, both on the energy and financial areas. It's just, you know, banks with interchange fees, that was one of the things that you were the leader in the Congress on. And a lot of people don't know that the credit card companies make more at a gas station than the gas station does.
It's unbelievable. It's an incredible ripoff. Did you know that?
Part of the problem that we have with our financial system, which is now in the Senate, and it's going to be a very interesting conference. I think it's going to move out. I heard this morning in mid-March, so we're in a short time window here. Right now, speculation in energy derivatives is about $1 to $1.50 a gallon premium that's coming out of the U.S. economy and going to the investment banks right now. And you know, these things are on an average of 35 times leverage. And there's no oversight. It's all completely manipulated markets right now. And we need to get a control of that, not just for energy, but for everything else, because it's the same game. Most people don't realize that the unregulated derivative industry worldwide is now about $600 trillion. The U.S. portion of that's $300 trillion. Average leverage of 35 times. If it's a currency one, you can get 400 times leverage. It's like going to the bank and saying, I'm going to Vegas. I get $1,000 bucks. I'm pretty good. You want to front me 400,000? It's the same thing that's going on. You know, U.S. GDP is only 14 trillion. Your discretionary budget in the federal government is, what, 2 trillion maybe? I don't know. So these numbers are really significant, and when that comes to conference, don't side on the side of the banks because they're making, you know, Goldman's personal bonus will 15, 19 for personal bonuses. So that's important, and that's money coming out of the economy. Now, as it relates to energy development in the future, and efficiency does pay off, and I applaud all the efforts that you're doing there. And one of the It's a Northeast issue as it relates to possible future energy development. There is a process that was started by the Maine, University of Maine paper school. It's a cellulosic chemical process for converting waste cellulose from trees, whether it's pulp or whether it's leaves, it really doesn't matter. They've had a test plant in Gorham, Maine for 10 years, and it produces a product that's like kerosene out of it. They were denied the first round of, they were doing an expansion plan for testing it out, which the Department of Energy put them on the secondary list. I think they're going to get their grant, but the advantages to that are that they can produce competitively priced, you know, as cheap as regular diesel fuel without any tax subsidies. Where the bio, whether it be soy oils, requires $1 a gallon tax credit for it to be viable, and that's currently been suspended. It works well with old paper mill locations. You produce power. You score better because you're not furrowing, not using energy to furrow fields and stuff like that. So when you're talking about new energy and deployment of infrastructure, that it will save those industries that are very energy intensive in the Northeast, utilizing a local resource, particularly the waste components of it, generate power, which we're going to need, provide into my fuel infrastructure a product that scores much better than natural gas from an impact on the environment perspective, and it's cheaper than conventional sources. So I'll talk to your staff more later.
Okay, great.
But that's an
Sean's been doing tremendous work on this whole energy futures, trading on futures of oil. You know, airlines need to have a future contract to have price stability, but speculators are betting, basically, they're trying to drive the price up or down, depending on whether they're long or short. That's really what it boils down to, and it's having, you said, $1.50 per gallon impact at the pump, so that obviously is money out of our pockets, consumers' pockets. It's really a brutal, brutal issue. It's all unregulated, and the legislation that we're considering wants to essentially create an open exchange that is public, and it's much like a stock market where there is more transparency about the price and a lot less ability to manipulate.
What happens
thank you
globally?
for your work.
What happens globally if we, I mean, isn't it a global market for?
It is a global market. The United States dominates the market. The Europeans are currently doing significant re-regulation on that. Their time window for that is about 18 months. It takes a little bit longer for the European Union. They're much more strict in their re-regulation structure. I've read through some of the documents, and that's all happening now, but everyone wants us to do it as well. The Germans think that this is a Anglo-Saxon social problem of gambling, but the Europeans are very supportive.
But we do have to coordinate it. I mean, you've got a good point, because a lot of this stuff is global, but there's a lot of more receptivity to dealing with the out-of-control elements of the financial sector. You know, we need a strong financial sector. You have to have it. You have to have banks that are willing to lend money to businesses that are going to create jobs. But if the financial sector becomes dedicated to trading at the expense of lending, then you don't have the strong financial sector you need to build a sustainable economy. So, you know, I actually think that Paul Volcker is right. That he wants to, you know, go back to more of a separation between commercial lending and investment banking. In the commercial lending, you've got the depositor money, and you've got backstop with the taxpayer. But on the investment banking, which is where we went wire, folks who are going to do that have to do it on their own dime, and we just can't have this system where it's private profit and you socialize the loss.
It also doesn't build anything. In these derivatives, it's all immediate, you get millisecond trading where they get a capital gain for the trade. And you're not,
Right.
I agree with Warren Buffett's idea that you should have a capital gains tax for long-term investments that create jobs at zero. And you should have very high capital gains for things that people are
Hyper-trading.
holding for milliseconds.
Right.
You don't build any new energy sources
Right.
when you're driving the price up. The investment's not going into nuclear plants,
Right.
hydro plants, whatever it is.
Right, yeah.
I've got 2 points, Congressman. One, to thank you very much for the work you did in the federal grants for renewable energy projects, and to put a plug in for an extension of
Sorry.
another 2 years.
Yeah.
Between the permitting and the
Well,
size
you
of
were
the
on the job,
Yeah.
you and Jeff, yeah.
Right, right. So we wanted just an encouragement to consider an extension of that. And then an add to the bank idea of getting banks to loan, especially to small businesses. The idea of the carrot and the stick. And the example is, how did we get a drinking age of 21 in Vermont? It wasn't because everybody voted on this great idea. It was because the federal said, if you don't,
Right,
you won't get these funds for your highways.
right,
And so Obama spoke last night of $30 billion to go to small banks so that they would start loaning to companies like ours. And the exchanges we've had to date is, well, are your financials better than 2008? And last year was a tough, tough year. So no, they're not better than 2008. And so the banks are saying, sorry, we'd help you if. So we need a carrot and a stick from the federal level to say, no, you need to go and help these people with these funds, because, and then if you don't, I don't know.
well, look,
So that's
Tori,
three.
I'm totally there. I mean, that's why I've got, you mentioned that I want to tax these bonuses and put that money in the lending. I mean, you can't have a sustainable market system and capitalist economy without a strong financial sector that's willing to lend money to legitimate businesses. So, we've seen in Vermont, we've got some local bankers here, but they've been doing it, but you guys missed out on the subprime wave, you're probably really regretting that now,
Do the bankers want to say anything, or?
But, I mean, you are right.
I think
And I run into
what I said earlier is
Yeah.
that this bill that's in Congress now, both in the Senate and in the House, and their companion bill, Senator Snow is promoting it in the Senate, allows the SBA to guarantee loans up to 90%. It allows for up to $5 million, where today it's 75%. It eliminates fees where the borrowers don't have to pay the fees.
Right, and those closing costs are brutal, right?
Well, I did a loan this year with $2 million. The fee was over $50,000, and under the first stimulus package, that was waived
Yeah,
for the borrower. So that was
That helps.
7A SBA.
7A SBA. There's other components
huge.
to it, but and
well, I'll get on that, but the
it's
lending,
sitting there, it's ready to go. It was
Yeah.
supposed to be voted on in December, then it said, okay, we'll do it by sometime in January, and then the last I heard, it was gonna get done by the end of January, and now it's getting pushed into February, and the
No, we'll check it
second
out.
piece of the stimulus
Yeah.
was extended to February 28th. And if that goes away, they establish these queues, and, it's just a mess, and this extends everything through.
right, and this is a tool that's been helpful.
Pardon?
This
Oh,
has been-
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, my view on these things, it's kind of a, Vermonter view. If something's working, let's do more of it. If it's not working, forget it, and let's make it simple. And you got a program that's working, then good, let's keep doing
The
it.
other thing it does is that, we start with a company, and we have a limit of a guarantee of $1.5 million. And that
Yeah.
company grows, we can't help them, because
Right.
we're at $1.5 million. This bill increases that guarantee up to 4.5.
Right, and I've been hearing from business folks that limit's got to come up. And that's a good thing, right? Because that's an indication of some progress, so.
Peter, one of the big disadvantages that our American companies have around the world, and we do business around the world, is that our tax rates, corporate tax rates, are much higher than, generally speaking, in the industrialized world. And so I wondered, you know, is there any movement afoot to make American business more competitive in that area?
There is. You know, we've not done the review on tax reform that I think is necessary, because we do pay, in some cases, not in all, that's the thing, higher corporate tax rates. On the other hand, we don't want our companies to be at a competitive disadvantage. On the other hand, we also have some scofflaws that are using tax havens to avoid paying their fair share. And obviously you don't want to tolerate that, because that increases the burden on everyone else. And we've not focused, as I think we need to, on an overhaul of the tax system, to look at it from the perspective of equity and impact. Because the goal for us has to be, in this country, to start building things again. I mean, I do believe that we have to get back to trying to have a greater portion of our economy be in manufacturing.
That's a big anchor around NAC for our corporate tax rates, you know, the highest, well, one of the highest in the industrialized world. You know, to get back to where you want to get to in terms of making things in this country. So I think it's a big issue. It's a big number for a company like us.
Okay.
It's very significant. It gets to the possible return on capital at risk, which is a daily question for us. We're a manufacturer. We were founded over 50 years ago in Vermont. We're doing business in other regions of the United States, and we're also doing business in China and Mexico. The China and Mexico is because we needed to be close to where our customers have operations. Ironically, as we've expanded out of Vermont, despite the fears of our employees, it has strengthened our business in Vermont. That happened with our first move out of the state down to Texas. It's happened in subsequent moves in the United States, and it happened when we went internationally. Meaning, with international presence, we represent a strong enough company with enough global reach that a significantly wider range of customers are interested in doing business with us worldwide, very much including Vermont. That said, with that presence, we get a daily or a constant indication of what the return is on what we're doing in different places. And in China, we're looking at a 12% tax rate. In Mexico, it's between 17 and 28%. In the United States, it's more like 40% when you combine state and federal returns. So that's a big deal.
That's a big deal, yeah.
It's a huge deal. I've got the floor for a second, so let me add a couple other thoughts. We're all products of our experiences in terms of how we view the world and what we think works. I spent formative years as a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa, 3 years there, in a planned economy. And I went there as a post-Vietnam War, long-hair, ultra-liberal Massachusetts guy. And halfway, I was in the business environment there. Halfway through that, looked up and said, "This is nuts. This centrally managed, planned economy doesn't work. It puts incentives where they shouldn't be. It doesn't permit sort of the organic response to thousands and hundreds of thousands of factors on the ground." As time's gone on, I've become astonished at the law of unintended consequences in things that we do as a company and in things that happen out of decisions in Montpelier and in Washington. This morning I've heard a lot about moving dollars and reallocating dollars at the federal level. Well, I'm not sure, some of the guarantees we talked about are investments in alternative energies. I'm not sure that that's a good use of that tax rate increment from, let's call it 20% to 40%. In order to fund those things, we're doing that on the backs of our businesses, and we're doing it on the backs of the tax rates on our employees. These are not specific observations, but I know that they color my perception of what works and what doesn't work. When we are in the trenches each day, we provide a great career to employees in Vermont, and we are making it happen. So I just throw that out as a cautionary note. And I'd be happy to chat at greater length some other time.
Small and local. Keep it local.
Well, make sure there's for those putting their money at risk, make sure that there's a return on that at risk. Make sure that the decisions are being made by those with that money at risk. And I don't disagree with that, breaking out the investment banking and the commercial banking. That's the type of thing that makes sense to me. But yeah, keep it simple.
Thank you. Thank you. Nato.
Anthony Norwood from Silver Market. I appreciate everyone's concern about energy cost, and obviously we're in renewable energy business, have been since 1975 and barely keeping alive all these years. And I'm sure you're very aware of success in European markets of feed-in and tariff model, where Vermont Speed has been leader in the country to introduce feed-in tariff to bring renewable energy as part of energy mixture. For those of you who may not realize how successful feed-in and tariff in Germany, especially in German market, they have reached their 20% renewable energy base goal by, I think, 3 years ahead, right? So it's the only taxation that I know of that actually has real meaningful sunset, meaning there's only defined period of time that the taxation happens. No one likes to be taxed forever and ever, and taxation to continue to go up. But I agree with you, Congressman, of nuclear industry being subsidized for indefinitely through Price-Anderson Act of 1958 for insurance of nuclear power. Nuclear industry not have to pay for their disposal of a high-level nuclear waste that we have never found solution for. All those issues have to be in balance with other sources of energy that we need to develop. Our reliance of very strong, almost 100% fossil fuel economy has to be sunsetted, and to start thinking in terms of hybrid energy economy, particularly locally grown energy, because the cost of energy to actually transport the energy itself is never even showing up on our books. So more we develop, whether if it's solar or biomass or other sources that we can develop locally and regionally, is far better economic model than anything that we are relying on today. We encourage you to, perhaps develop feed-in tariff, federal level feed-in tariff.
People know what the feed-in tariff is. Vermont is the first state in the nation to do it. Actually, my wife Margaret is on the Energy Committee, was the sponsor of the legislation. But it basically is an incentive so that you can have a stable price if you're a developer, say, of solar or wind, and you're providing power. And then, obviously, it gives you some stability in terms of your investment for a set period of time. And this is a tax incentive where you're really trying to get a market going, and it has then ripple effects if it works out well. Vermont's the first state that has it. It's been very oversubscribed, immense amount of interest, and it fits the green profile that is beneficial to, I think, a lot of Vermont businesses. It's something that we have and we want to keep. but thank you.
Todd, did you want to?
Sure, yeah. Todd Whipple, United Construction. We're proposing the redevelopment of Prospect Street here in Hartford.
Great.
And I just wanted to touch on job creation for a little bit and some of the federal programs that are proving to be pretty instrumental in a time where there's illiquid credit markets. One being the EB-5 program that's been so famous.
Right.
Senator Leahy. We're in the EB-5 program, had the privilege to go with a delegation and Governor Douglas to Asia.
Oh, you did? That's great.
To the about 5 countries in 12 days. And it's our project's probably gonna create somewhere around 275 jobs over the next 4 years if we can build it out as it's projected. In conjunction with EB-5, we're using Section 108 HUD under the slums and blight hook as opposed to the low to moderate income hook. And this gentleman mentioned the low to moderate income, and that is a bit of an issue when you're looking for HUD funding. Luckily for us, we have a contaminated piece of property, so it was it was a different bucket we could pull from. But also community development block grants, a TIF district, incremental financing, which just passed the Board of Selectmen last night or the night before. Although it did take a second to at least get the letter of intent. But what we're finding is it's more at the local level, local government level, with some of these federal programs like community development block grants, like HUD, that to just get the resolutions passed for us to even apply to the federal. The state and federal are great, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. They're wonderful to work with. It's kind of straightforward. You have to do your time, but you're going to get the stuff through. And it's the local government stuff that seems to be personality specific, bureaucratic, just local politics. And that's probably not an easy fix through the lens of the federal. But that being said, we're pulling together a $25 million development package for 5 five-story buildings that will put together probably 140,000 square feet of retail commercial.
That's incredibly exciting,
And
right down on the river.
Yeah, and right on the river, right.
It's unbelievable.
It's the gateway to Vermont, the stimulus funding was gracious enough to replace a $14 million bridge for us, which is the gateway to our project. So we'll probably upgrade that with V-Trans to a roundabout to try to accommodate the level of service for traffic that needs to happen at that entrance. It'd be nice if we widened the underpass on the railroad there a little bit, but that's a touchy subject too.
You're getting quite a list going.
But I guess what I want to say is that the importance of HUD, the importance of EB-5, the importance of community development block grants are just absolutely.
Well, it's good to hear that, because there's a lot of voter fatigue with the spending. And, I actually am strongly in favor of getting our budget in balance. But the things that we've had to deal with, the collapse of the financial sector and the Bush request for $750 billion for a bailout, the sledgehammer that put to the economy. We've got the highest unemployment rate since 1982. But what's even more alarming, people who are out of work, they haven't been out of work for so long since the Depression. So the duration of unemployment now goes back to the Depression. So it's serious. And you guys are contending with it. Any of you who are in business are contending with this. Consumers who can't spend. And it's really, really rough. So historically, when there's been a real collapse in demand because of high unemployment, the straight Keynesian approach is government is the spender of last resort, and there's got to be stimulus spending. And hearing what you just described is an indication of why that can really reverse the cycle. And it's a contradiction, so it's tough to understand, because on the one hand, when the deficit's going up, the whole point of the whole theory of that government stimulus spending is that you're going to reverse it. You've got to have government stepping in. In doing so, it actually, if it's successful and brings down unemployment, that's going to start getting government revenues up again, in businesses going stronger. So we've got to do both, have a long-term path to fiscal stability and balance, and a short-term boost to keep the economy going and revive it.